Hello everybody, Bryan here again on this beautiful Friday, just before noon. Thought I'd come out and try another walk and talk here at Buckner Park in southwestern Fort Wayne, Indiana. Just outside the city limits, in fact, close to a Boyd. I've been in this area before, but I haven't been here yet. Although, full disclosure, I have tried to make this video 3 times now, and I just cannot seem to get it right. And I think it's because of the topic today, which I will go ahead and get into. Before I go, what we see here behind the sign is a huge soccer field that they've been basically working on for a short period of time, and they just got it finished just at the beginning of May. We have a professional soccer team here now, and they've played a few games over there now. The outside is still needing to be finished, but you can definitely go in there and enjoy a game. It's a bit pricey. I don't think I'll be going to one this season, but for those who enjoy soccer, I've heard it's a pretty good experience. Back here, there's a little building. This is going to actually be an ice cream shop. So if you are along the trail here, there's a trail that runs along this road. Stop over there, get some ice cream, enjoy the park over here, which I'll be getting into here shortly, and have a nice day with it. So, as mentioned, the topic I'd like to talk about is a little strange, but I do think it's important to bring up when thinking about, working in an elementary school, being the adult in the room. Sometimes we get asked questions that could be a little tough to answer, and one of them I've come across has given me some challenge, not in my view of it or my opinion upon it, or what sort of personal feeling or belief I have in it. It's how I'm supposed to respond, and that's really the struggle. So to get into the topic, let me bring up a scenario so you can understand what I'm talking about here. At the end of this past school season, a student very close to me, whom I've been working with for a couple years now, who I was sad to see go on to 6th grade, going to be at a different school next season. I was walking with her in the hallway, and out of the blue, she asked me, "Mr. Bryan, do you believe in God?" Now, my answer is actually pretty simple. It's a simple no. But what I've noticed is when I get into that sort of question with students, I kind of have to pause, because I need to, how should I put it? I need to frame it in such a way that does not impede on how they feel or make them feel, for lack of a better word, dumb or ignorant. Ultimately, I want to be as fair as I possibly can be with this. And I'm going to pause for a second, because over here, I might actually walk this way so you can see this. But there's a really nice pavilion here. I'm going to turn around this way, come back. There's a pavilion over here, really nice, fully shaded, a lot of tables under there. It's really nice. But beyond that, really, really cool playground area. I've actually gone over there a few times and messed around with it. They had a balance board. You stand on it and you try to keep yourself upright. It's sitting on a spring, so it's feeling your weight changes. So if you put more emphasis on one side, it's going to dip. It's really good at working your core. I like it quite a bit. But other than that, there's a splash pad over here. Pretty much every day in the summertime. There are kids here, parents, parties, lots of fun things going on. It's a beautiful little park, and beyond it is a field. It's just barren. Nothing out there at all. And I think what I'm going to do today, I'm going to go ahead and walk around that field, and then maybe pick up the other trail that's back there. There is a straight trail that just goes off into a dead end, and there's this loop, this gravel loop. And yes, curb your dogs, please. But I'm going to take this loop around and talk about this topic the best I can. Now, as stated, it's taken me a few times to get this right. Because what I find is when I talk about this subject, I go off into a little bit of a tangent or down a rabbit hole with my views on this, because this isn't some casual feeling I have or opinion. I've been working on this for several years. I have a secondary hobby, so to speak, as it concerns religion and having debates and speaking with pastors about things. So I want you to go into this with the understanding that I certainly do not believe, but it is not necessarily my job to tell someone they can't believe, because I believe fully in our constitutional right, freedom of religion, but I also feel strongly that it comes with a strong caveat that freedom of religion implies freedom from religion, which means just as you have a right to your beliefs, you do not have a right to impart that forcefully on other people. And of course, that would get us right into talk about, bringing religion into public schools and things like that. But back to the original question from this student. My quick answer to it is no, I don't believe. And if they were to ask me why, which she did not, I would say, well, the evidence that supports that belief just isn't there. So when I answered it for her, I said, no, I don't believe there is a God. She didn't challenge me on it. What she said was, yeah, I'm not really sure either. Sometimes I feel there is, sometimes I feel there isn't. And that's where it ended. What's interesting about this is this particular student, she loves to doodle. If you give her a worksheet, she'll do the work with a little bit of nudging and encouragement. But with every answer she gives, there is just a wide arrangement of little doodles and pictures and repeated symbols that she'll draw. Like if she's on a happy face sort of obsession in the moment, she'll put happy faces all over everything. Well, she's put Christian symbolism on there too, crosses and little platitudes of, God loves me, Jesus loves me, all over her paperwork. And the teachers and we all understand she has trouble with impulse control, maintaining focus, concentration. So we don't ding her too much for that. We try to keep her on task, but we realize she struggles mightily with these things. So I try to shift from disappointment and frustration to, oh, that's cute. She's given me pictures before, and I've kept them, and they're a chaotic mess, but I do love her work, mainly because of how I feel about her. And that's really the point, right? But back to the question. When I'm asked these things about religion, concepts of God, Jesus, excuse me, despite my personal feeling, I try to remain as fair and neutral as I can. 2 reasons. 1, the child may not fully understand what they believe. And what we have learned about religion is that this is typically a belief from learned behavior. So if mom and dad or a close guardian believes it and they impart it upon their kids or those that they are caring for, chances are the kid is going to pick up on that. So if you remember, a young child is a sponge. The brain is actively seeking understanding of the world around them. So when a parent or a guardian imparts that upon them, they will likely accept it. Sight unseen. No questions asked. Second thing is, I have to also remember that the kid is not fully developed. So while it might be strategically important for me to counterbalance religious dogmatic belief with good skepticism and critical thinking and adherence to logical standards and things like that. It's hard to do that in a school because the big problem with belief is that it encroaches upon a parent's ability to institute their own moral standard, which is really just a long way of saying you can't tell me what I can teach my kid in my own home. Well, that might be true, which is why I try to not change minds, so to speak. I will give my personal opinion, my view, and I'll leave it up to that student to figure things out on their own. Because the truth of it is, I'm not working in a school district that is actively secular, where we're actively trying to undo the influence of religious thinking. That's not what we do. What we do is we take a position of neutrality, where if you are a student who has religious beliefs, you are free to practice them within reason on your own as an individual. What we cannot do is acknowledge a particular religion and force those activities upon the whole of the student body. That, of course, would be unfair. So, irrespective of my personal opinions and views, to be fair to the student, because I do care, I simply give my personal feeling and that's it. I will answer the question because chances are a student comes to me with that question because, one, they respect me, they view me as a trusted adult, and they believe I will give them a good discussion. The third one is a little tough because I don't know if I can really have the discussion in school. I might want it. I might want to talk to them, ask them what they believe and why, but that's not what I'm there for. So, once again, we talk about boundaries and limits and balancing that out with honesty. And if we value honesty, we should be able to have those discussions, but again, parental sovereignty, parental autonomy to raise their kids in a particular manner, we ultimately have to abide by that. Now, my deep down counter argument would be, well, if you care that much, send your kid to an academy, send your kid to a religious school, something like that. That way they can be raised in the appropriate, so to speak, environment that you want to grow in them. Oh, look here. Little tiny turtle. I don't like him being on the path. It is alive. It's moving its head. What I might do, just out of curiosity. Oh, it's moving. Hoi. I like being on the leaf, that's for sure. Yeah, keep moving. Get out of there. You know, if I liked touching animals in that way, I would, well, maybe not. This is a pretty deep drop off here. I'd put them by the water, but even if I got down there, I don't think I can get back up. So, again, weighing my options here, thinking about different things I could do. Maybe I will kind of nudge him in the other direction, maybe. He's not too far away from the grass. Yeah, it's moving now. I'm going to let him go. Decisions, right? Yeah, back to the options for parents. In my area, there's at least 2 religious-based schools. Both of them are Catholic. The other ones are, the other schools, I mean, generally speaking, there are plenty of public schools, of course, but there are 2 that are specifically Catholic. And I sometimes wonder if it's better for a typical non-denominational, so to speak, Christian to take their kid and have them attend a Catholic school, because even though the beliefs are different, it's better than being in a secular school or a so-called secular school. I don't know. It's hard to figure out the thinking around this myself. It's so difficult for me to pin down a person's motivations, because in my view, believing is just not enough. You have to have something to independently verify what it is you believe. As it's been said before, if you think about the Venn diagram, there's all these things you believe. Big circle. Within that Venn diagram of that circle, there's a smaller circle. Those are the things that are actually true. So we can believe a lot of things that are not true. We can believe things that are actually true. How do you tell the difference? How do you verify? And that's where my trouble comes in, because a lot of religious belief does not have that verified evidential backing behind it. People say there is, but really what they're doing is they're making claims and assertions. Now, for someone who works in elementary school, where we are teaching kids things that are verifiably true, like, for example, mathematics, there's nowhere within there where a kid can say, well, it might be true that 2 plus 2 is 4, but in my heart of hearts, I believe it's 5. Well, they're free to believe it, because I'm not there to convict someone of a thought crime. But from a demonstrability standpoint, I would expect them to back that up. Well, if you believe 2 plus 2 is 5, could you demonstrate that for me? Could you verify it's true? They wouldn't be able to. And what that should do is tell that kid, oh, wait, if I can't demonstrate this, then it's not true. Or, if I can't verify it, there's a good likelihood it's not true. What they might be able to do is just find themselves at let's say, a default position of I don't know. And that could be the goal. Because it's not necessarily this is true, and I believe it's true, or it's false and I believe it's false. There could be an in-between, depending on the situation at hand. And I do believe that much of a religious sort of belief, dogmatic belief, having to adhere to certain rules, I think comes down to just, okay, I feel it to be so, therefore it must be. Which is another way of saying, if I want something to be true, therefore it must be true. And I certainly don't like that. So when in schools, when you're asked that question, hey, do you believe in God? Do you carry belief? Are you Christian? Are you whatever the case may be? I don't know if there's truly a good enough answer to cover all bounds. But I think if you look at it from a fairness standpoint, the fairness of giving kids, even though they're underdeveloped and may not know what they believe fully, the opportunity to exercise those beliefs under their, constitutional rights. Treat the answer as something that is rather neutral. You can be honest, but you don't necessarily have to guide them to a discussion. Some cases might be better that way. And that would be unfair, because a lot of times it comes down to the parents. If a kid goes home and says, you know what, Mr. Bryan told me that he doesn't believe in God, and what he said made sense, and I'm not sure I do either. The parent given the history of parental involvement in schools, there's a high likelihood that that parent is going to flip out and yell at the school, come in, rant and rave, and the school will have nothing to do but then to kind of suck it up and diffuse the situation. That's happened before for much more trivial things. So when there's a threat of backlash, you have to take that into consideration when talking to a kid. So if you know the kid's parents, for example, I don't know anybody's parents, so to speak. I'm not really allowed to. But I've heard from teachers about how parents have been during at conferences, during calls home, when their child is acting up, showing negative behaviors, hurting people, getting into fights. And that paints a picture of hostility. So if there's hostility at home and there's overprotection of the student at home, it makes it a lot harder to speak honestly with those kids. In some ways, you are held hostage by the emotional situation at home because it translates to the kid. The kid's trying to figure out life, so they're already struggling. And what we could be as educators and trusted adults in the room is a counterbalance to that sort of negativity. But are we really allowed to? Not really. Because ultimately, what the parent says is true, must be true, and what they wish to see happen in the classroom, we've got to abide by. Educators, folks like myself, are really held hostage that way. And it's terribly unfair, because this is our profession. But it's something we have to consider when talking with children. So what do you think? How do you handle these situations? Do you just burst open with discussion? Do you tell those kids, oh yeah, I absolutely do believe, and it's absolutely true, and here's why? Or do you say something effective, I never connected with that belief, I don't think I'm a believer? How far do you go with it? Do you even say a word? The thing is, I'd like to actually have the discussion. If I treat these kids as creatures that desperately want to figure out things, want to think about things, they want information, they're trying to make sense of this wild, crazy world around them. And they're hearing one thing at home, but then they come to school where they're told, okay, this is your education. Here's what you need to learn. It would make sense that I would be inclined to give them another point of view. In other words, as some religious people say, teach the controversy. I'm willing to have that discussion. But, again, is that really my job within that particular topic? I would say no. Because, again, we are a school that is not actively against religion. We're just secular by process of what we teach. We have a particular curriculum, has nothing to do with religion, and that's it. Now the religious people say, well, you're actively against us because we believe this, and your science curriculum says this, that, and the other, so therefore you're against us. No. We're teaching what we can verify as being a trustworthy model that relates to reality. For example, if we talk about the water cycle, we can verify that's the case. If we were to say, well, let's think about the religious person. If we say the water cycle is the active result of Poseidon tampering with the atmosphere, they would probably get up in arms, because they would go, wait a minute, how do you know that? Aha, how do you know? A question of knowledge. How do you demonstrate this? we can't demonstrate it, if we said, well, this is what we believe, they would get up in arms again and probably remove their kid from the school. Funny how that double standard works. We've got to accept their belief without any evidence. But if we try to do the same thing, we get slammed for it. Or if we give them models of reality that are verified, they still get up in arms because it doesn't match their belief. Irrational does not really cover that sort of thinking. So knowing this goes on, as I'm sure some of you have probably experienced in schools, we go right back to that original scenario. A young student comes to me who trusts me, who has built a good working relationship with me over a series of years, wants to know my feeling on something. Do I tell them the absolute truth of my opinion, or do I play fair and just say a little bit and then move on? That's the struggle. And I think it will always be that way. And it shouldn't be if we value honesty. But the problem is my honesty infringes on someone else's belief. Not directly, but just by virtue of me being an adult in the room and being in close proximity with a student who's being told what else to believe. That's it. They're being told they need to believe in God, Jesus, Jesus the Anointed, Jesus Christ, the risen Messiah, the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ to atone for our sins. There's a lot of weight to that belief, my goodness. Now, this is normally where I would be apt to just end this discussion right now. I'd end the video at 27 minutes, wish you a good day, and then see you another time. But as I said, I've tried this 3 times already, and every single time I'm tempted to get into my personal views on things beyond the classroom. And I feel myself going there again. So because I've caught myself, I'm going to change this up a bit. I will leave this for, if you have any comments, feel free to leave them. So let me see if I can change the subject as I head back. By the way, this path, interestingly, how this is crafted. I mean, this is clearly a grass path. Well manicured edges here. This, I believe, is going to be paved over so that the people of that housing addition back there, where I couldn't enter, will be able to enjoy the park directly by coming right down this path and hitting that main trail. When that's going to happen, I'm not too sure. But I'm happy with this little grassy path anyways. Now down here it's a little tough. They'll have to kind of fill this in, or maybe make a little bridge. That'd be nice. It's kind of precarious here. There we go. That's the pavilion I sat at for a while. You can curve around here. I called this a dead end, and it really is, but there's a tiny little loop. So if you're on your bike, you can swing around here. What's interesting is, I'm not sure why they did this, but the pavilion is over here. And that path curves around that I just walked right through here. And then there's your bike rack. So if you want to go to the pavilion with a bike, park it here, walk over here. I'm not sure why they just didn't put this right next to it. Odd. But nevertheless, back on the path. Oh. My personal history with education, there's only been one person in my family who actually worked within that field. My father was a truck driver. Mother worked all over the place, ended up being a house cleaner when she wasn't being a layabout at home. But my aunt, the antithesis of my mother, she was very successful. She took care of herself. She went to college, married wonderfully, married a great man, had a wonderful, beautiful daughter, very successful. It's a very successful story. But my aunt, she was a teacher, elementary school teacher. And years ago when I told her I was getting out of the factory, trying to do something better with myself, I had mentioned that education was where I was going to go. And, she was just over the moon with that. Because that's what she did. She went to college to get a degree and then taught. And from what I understand, she was a great teacher. She was very sympathetic towards the kids, treated them well, knew how to apply the firm hand, knew when to pull back. And in my process of getting into schools, I would tell her the things I would experience and how different they were from when I was a kid. At that point, I was about mid-30s or so when I finally got into education. So my frame of reference, as I've pointed out in other videos, is that mid-80s to early to mid-90s sort of realm. Those are my wonder years, so to speak. And the things I would tell her that were going on, she would just, wide-eyed, open-mouthed, wondering why things changed so poorly and devolved. And I understand that view when you think about comparing your life to some other life, because you notice the contrast. We can find things that are similar, that we can compare, but it's really the contrast that motivates us the most, at least with our behaviors in mind. Because I talked about testing, the use of technology, which I didn't get too deeply into, but I still have strong opinions about that. And things like the arrangement of the room, individualized desks, seating pods, or what they call preferred seating. By the way, I was bringing up the topic of the tables to our instructional coach in the school. And she defended the view of these oddball tables being jammed together to make pods as being, students' ability to have preferred seating. And it made me laugh because the only time I ever got a detention in school, I was a bit troubled growing up. I kept it managed well, and I never really got in trouble that much. But one time, I think it was 7th or 8th grade, I got in trouble in art class because I sat in the wrong seat. If I had been sitting, 8 feet behind me, I would have been okay, but because I was in the wrong seat, the teacher got mad and gave me a detention. The only detention I ever had in my life. But much to that teacher's chagrin, what she didn't realize was that I was just exercising my right to preferred seating. But nowadays, when we are held hostage by the behaviors of students and the subsequent behaviors of parents, we tend to be lenient and we give more space. And I think that's where this coach was coming from. It was a veiled way of saying, look, we're just trying to get through the school season, and if it makes the kids happy and content and comfortable to sit wherever they want, by all means, let's do that. So detention for not sitting in the right seat in 7th grade. Great. That's on my permanent memory record of school. And there was one other time I got in trouble, and I don't believe I talked about this, but it illustrates the difference between today's way of responding to destructive, negative behavior. Today's view of that versus when I was a kid. So I'm going to go back to 4th grade, 1987. It was a great time for me in the sense that I was a reliable student. I knew what I was doing. You give me a spelling test, it's a guaranteed A. There's no doubt about it. I represented my school in our annual fall time festival, the Johnny Appleseed Festival, where everyone pretends to be a pioneer for a day and eat cornbread and like apple pie and things like that, and listen to the sounds of snare drums and tom-toms and things, and kind of get lost in the moment. But every year they had a spelling bee, and I represented our school for that year. I came in 2nd place, and interestingly enough, the word I messed up was believe. The whole I before E rule I screwed up. BELEIVE. And as soon as I said it, I knew I was wrong. And that was it. And you know what my reward was for being 2nd place? I got stung in the neck by a bee. And I screamed my head off, and my mom yelled at me. So I was in a stressful moment. 2nd place, to me, that's failure for myself, because I knew I could do better. And on the way back to the car, dressed up like a little pioneer kid, bee comes around, gets me around that, I'm in the neck. All the nerves. And I'm screaming my head off, and she has the gall to yell at me. Well, good job, Mom. I'm going to turn back over here and get that gravel trail to finish up this video, as these bugs fly all over the place. Hopefully no bees. But back to the 1987, 4th grade, another time I got in trouble. So I had a friend of mine, I don't remember who it was. I just remember it was a close friend of mine. We were making spitballs in the class, and the teacher caught us. And what he did was he kept us in for recess, and he said, "Here's a jar. I want you two boys to make spitballs and fill up this jar." And we thought, man, that's weird. Okay. So we sat there in the hallway right outside his room, and we made these spitballs. And what we realized, and this is why that punishment was so brilliant, he made it to where we hated making these spitballs. Having to chew on the paper, get it wet, get into a ball, and put it in a jar. It was gross. It dried our mouths. It was tedious. We just hated it. And I'll tell you what, we never did that again. I don't know what he did with that jar. He probably just threw it out. Didn't matter. That wasn't the point. The point was he made us hate doing that. And it worked. Thinking about today, if you have a student in your classroom who does something like that, makes spitballs, shoots them through a straw from a Capri Sun, something really tiny like that, and you catch that kid and you say, "Look, since you want to make spitballs during my lesson, I'm going to take away your recess and have you make more of them for me. Since you love doing this, that's what we're going to do." If you had that kid do that, chances are you'd get in trouble, because it's unusual. There's a gross element to it. There's a physical requirement for it. And having the kid chew up paper to prove a point would not fly. Now, you already know my feelings on taking away recess, but the point remains. To have a kid do that would not fly. You would have to do something else. It wouldn't be nearly as effective, because all you're looking for at that point is punishment. Not a teaching moment, but just punishment. But being in a classroom, or multiple classrooms, I guess, watching how teachers operate, using the tools that they're available to use, a lot of times I scratch my head. Is this really helping the situation, or is this just getting the teacher to get rid of some of that frustration? Oh, we're going to take your recess away. That's it. Because the hope there is that the kid ties the behavior to the loss of something that matters to them. Sometimes it works, I guess. I don't know how you measure that. But let's say it works. I don't know if there's really a teaching moment there, though. Because what it really tells a kid is, I'm not going to stop doing this behavior because it's wrong. I'm going to stop doing it because it's causing me to lose something else. And you might be thinking, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. But think about it this way. If a kid does something good and reward them every single time with candy or little fidget toys or something of the like, are they tying their good behavior to simply doing well and doing good because that's inherently good, or are they doing it for the reward? Certainly you would say, well, wait a minute, we want them to do well because it's the right thing to do. That's the point. If you're responding to positive behavior with toys, you can get away with that a little bit, especially if you put that out there first. But if you're the type of teacher that wants to drive up a loyalty or adherence to something, and you keep doing the candy and the toys over and over again, you're actually teaching a behavior trait that doesn't actually work in your benefit. Because you want these kids to learn what I'll call morality as being inherently good. So good morality is inherently good. Bad morality is inherently bad. You don't necessarily need to require punishment or reward to make that known. I had taken some kids from a 4th grade classroom into a different classroom to work with them on some testing materials, some review stuff, things like that. Good kids, but they have trouble paying attention in the classroom on their own. So I agreed to take them away and put them in a little small group. We sat there for about 40 minutes going through these questions and things and drumming up discussion about them. And when we were done, one of the kids said, hey, usually when we do these things, we get candy for it. And I smiled and said, yeah, I'm not that type. You do good things because it's good. And you were good. That reward is you feel good about what you've done. I know that goes against certain viewpoints of elementary school token reward systems and currency issues. Well, that's the other thing. I might have to save this for a different video. Maybe this will be my next video. Token currencies in the classroom, where for good behavior you're given money of some sort, and then you spend that money in a shop where you buy things that ultimately get you in trouble for being distractions. That's been a big problem the past couple of years. I might say that for another video, so be prepared. But I'm back to the beginning here at about 50 minutes of run time. I feel pretty confident. This is a much better video for me. I reined it in. So I'm gonna mull around here a little more off camera, check out some stuff, think about what to do for lunch, and then get to work on my master's program junk. I've been avoiding it all week. And do some yard work. Also been avoiding that. So thanks for sticking with me. And if you're watching these videos, extra thanks to you for working through this with me. For it is a work in progress. Have a great rest of your day. Have a beautiful weekend. If you're anywhere in northern Indiana, be prepared for some sunny days and some fun out in the sun. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.